It's Ray from ProShaper Workshop in Charlton, Massachusetts, and we had a big long hiatus. We did a rust removal video on the Cadillac chassis last week. This week we're only going to do one video right now, but we want to do a little recap of what's been going on in the shop. I did, I think, 2 or 3 videos on this project here. This is a project we've been using at the class. It's a 1950s design that one of my students, Ed, from San Diego area. He's a retired medical doctor. He's 74 years old, a lifelong car guy. No, I don't know, it doesn't lifelong. I think last 25 years or so. And he fell in love with Alfas. He's got a whole bunch of Alfas. And he had the ambition to draw his own Alfa up on a napkin. And he looked at all the classic designs from the 50s. And he came up with this beautiful design you see here. And it's taken him quite a while to do it. He made it out of plywood and MDF and 35 gallons of Bondo and a lot of foam. And he got it pretty symmetrical, but we've decided that we're going to make one side of it with my flexible shape pattern method and then flip it. So Ed's been taking advantage of the fact that I often have 8, 10, 12 students in a class, and sometimes 4 or 5 of the students might want to work on Ed's project along with Ed. Ed's learning and the other students come in and they need something to learn on. What better to learn on and to be able to build a car like Ed's here. We've done that a bunch with some other cars. Maybe Mark can put some pictures in of Gary Ash's beautiful 31 Studebaker race car, which is now all together. It was built a lot by students here, including Gary. And also we have Jerry's 120 Jag. A lot of that was done here by students too, helping them out. So that's something that someone out in the audience, they want to have a nice car built. A perfect possibility is, like, I just had a student from New Jersey, Dan, and he wants to buy a 33 fiberglass Ford custom coupe, and he'll use that fiberglass body the same way as Ed is using this Alfa by taking flexible shape patterns off of it. He'll true up the surfaces first by bonding them and board filing them and everything, get them really nice, and then make all the panels using the flexible shape pattern and gauge system. And I hope Dan, when he does that next spring, he'll bring that 33 up and we can start making a 33 coupe, which would be a nice little project. But I just wanted to show you some of the panels that the students have made, and oftentimes they're brand new to this whole craft. They might have watched one of my YouTube videos and they fell in love with the idea of either restoring a car or building a car, and they figured that if they learned these skill sets, that would open up the potential for doing whatever they wanted to. And I just wanted to show you some of the panels that the students have made over the last couple months at the classes. This is the headrest fairing. Ed made this out of foam and Bondo, and that goes right behind the driver's seat. Gives you a nice fairing for the headrest. And this was the first panel ever made by a student, Robert, who actually is a designer for Nissan in Detroit, and he's been a designer for 23 years. The first time he ever did any metal work, and he was absolutely blown away how nice it came out, and he wants to come back too. And then we have an unfinished fender section here, which is well on its way. And then this was the front hood section, or the front part of the grill top. That's been welded together, 2 pieces. I think these are either for the back, underneath the rear fenders. And then over here we got some nice little pieces. These were done by a real young student, first panels he ever made. It's a matching set. I guess he's missing one little tip right here. And these little panels are tricky sometimes, just little simple ones. And here's part of a fender. And Ed incorporated in the fenders these really nice beads. And this has this beautiful taper to it. And one of my students from New Hampshire latched onto that. And this was kind of rough, and he shrunk it where it needed to be shrunk and stretched it where it needed to be stretched and planish that all out nice. So that's coming all along really nice. These are all pieces will be all welded together into a solid eventually. But you have to start at this point. This is another part of the rear fender made by one student. Door skins made by another student. We've got the trunk skin, which needs to be tipped still, and there'll be a highlight line in it. That was another student that made that. Ed's been making these around the grill. We made little dies, and he's been hammering these in with this little tool I showed before with these little Delrin die sets. We first just hitting it like this with a hammer, but now we're putting an air hammer in here. We put the air hammer in like this, and then you can feed it through, and it's working really nice. It's just an inexpensive way of doing it versus doing it in a pull max. We do have a trump machine, which is similar to a pull max, but I like to do the simple methods like this. Here's a rear fender assembly. We welded that one together. It still needs a little work. All these panels will be tuned a little bit more. Here's another panel that was made by another student. This is a real tricky little one. This goes underneath underneath where the headlight is. It goes like that on the left side over here. And parts of the rear fender here. But overall, it's just amazing quality, and I'm always really awed by how well the students can do. So that's one thing, is just Ed's car, which is coming along really well. And let's show you some more stuff. All right, so here's another project. This is a 52 Caddy Convertible that I bought from an old friend that I went to elementary and high school with. And this is the one that was sitting in the garage since 1965. We de-rusted it. There's a few little spots we still need to de-rust. And the major problems were very little denting, a few little minor dents, that's it. But this lower section was pretty rotted. So we decided that we're going to change that out. And I had a student from California, Dan, and his interest was to make a patch panel. So I said, well, you can try on this one. So I had him make the flexible shape pattern off of the original, which still took the pattern pretty well. It just has a little Swiss cheese going on. We made a bunch of gauges, little cardboard gauges. That gives you all the information of the bend here, the roll, and welding in position and everything. So there's a bunch of little gauges. They're all indexed on the flexible shape pattern. And you put the roll in the panel, and the flexible shape pattern even tells you where you got to put the holes for the trim and where it mounts on the bottom. All those hole locations are all there right in the flexible shape pattern, exactly where they need to be. Another thing that was missing on this was, let me swing this around. So Dan welded it in, and we got a pretty good job, except for right here and here. It's sunk in a little bit, so we got to build this up a little with a little weld and grind it a little. And this is the way your welds are going to finish off. And after you put the shrinking disc to your welded section, it's absolutely perfect. You'll not see any repair action or anything there. So, in the back here, they have an inner panel, and on this side it rusted away. On the other side, it's still there. So Esteban, another student and friend, made this flexible shape pattern off of the one that's still on the car, the other fender, and then made up this little piece here. And this piece is going to be eventually welded in right here. It needs to be all trimmed down and everything. And that supports this. It gets actually tied in right here. You can see we still yet to make this little bracket here, which is a mount bracket also. That gets added on, spot welded on to right here. And that finished the lower section, but then the upper section was where the raccoon was going in the garage and taken a pee on the hood and the fender, and it caused it to rot out pretty bad. All right, so the same student, Dan from California, who made this lower repair section, he made the flexible shape pattern off of the other side of the car. It would have been like this. It's on the, this is the left side, so he made it off the right side. And then we couldn't take the information off of here because the information is damaged. So now we flip this and we make the new panel, and Dan got most of the new panel done, but now Esteban is finishing it up. He put the bends in here, and now he's doing the final trim, and that will fit right in like that, and that'll get welded in, and then all that rust goes away, and then we'll have a pretty pristine fender. There's a few spots that are really heavy rust. We'll fix those up with a little, probably we'll use the phosphoric acid naval jelly on that to get those out, and then a little bit of the Home Depot phosphoric acid just to take some of this light stuff off, and then we're going to epoxy prime this, and that fender will be ready. There might be a very little filler here and there, but generally we try to do all this repair work without using any fillers. So just like the factory never had filler on these panels. The stampings were actually pretty good. To make that panel, again, he needed a bunch of gauges to pull the roll and everything. So he's done, between Esteban and Dan, they've done a beautiful job. That'll come out really nice. So that's the Cadillac fender. We'll continue on the Cadillac. Let's just take a little quick peek in the back here to see what we're doing with the de-rusting. All right, Mark just gave you a nice little overview of what the cocoon looks like we made out of some plastic tarp. And you saw the video last week we made, and some of the progress we made on the back. This is our little splash shield that we put in here. And I actually have double top in here, but it kind of got screwed up, so we're only using one. But we've made some great progress. Unfortunately, it ran out of solution today, so I got more on the way. It's coming tomorrow. You can see this last time was still loaded with rust, and now it's just about gone. The beams are all getting clean here. Even in the front there, you can see the frame members on the side are all nice and clean. The springs are showing a black color. They were just coated with rust, but apparently the black paint is still underneath the rust, amazingly. All of the U-bolts are all clean on the threads. I believe once we're going to show this, once we get this all done, we'll take a wrench and put them on there, and also on the wheel cylinders, how hard those hydraulic lines are generally to take out of the wheel cylinders. I believe we'll be able to back them right off, no problem. So you can see here the spring hangers are all getting nice now. The threads are all getting good. So, and what I did today was I made this nice little adjustable sprayer head. It's got a magnet in it. I used a part from my lathe, it's a shield, an eye shield, and it's infinitely adjustable. So now I can locate this wherever I want, and I'm doing detailed de-rusting in little spots. So I did the big amount with the big giant sprinkler, and now I'm hitting spots a little bit at a time. You can see the shock absorbers are all getting de-rusted there. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't hurt plastic. It doesn't hurt leather. It doesn't hurt copper or aluminum. And actually, you can see the aluminum around the springs there really cleaning up nice. You can see a little bit of the copper plating on the hydraulic brake lines on the rear end still. It's still a little copper showing. And it's hidden over here on the inside of the fender. And there was a little, no paint left there or no undercoating. And it's totally de-rusted, that lower section there. Now we're going to take these quarters off, and we're going to be de-rusting them separately also. So the Caddy is coming along really nice. In a couple weeks, it's going to look like an Arizona car. It's just going to be absolutely amazing, with no cleanup of the sand after No dismantling needed. All we got to do is put some new brake shoes in it and new hydraulic pistons if it needs it, and new seals on the rear end, and change out the oil in the rear end, and the rubbers, we'll look for the body rubbers and see how they look. If they're a little squash, we'll just take one bolt out at a time, put a new rubber in and put it back. We'll have to adjust them, of course, later on once we start fitting the doors and everything. But the Caddy is coming along good. Now let me show you the Scout Fender. All right, here's the Scout 800 Fender. I think it's a 66, I believe. And again, one of my students, or actually it was a husband and wife team from Florida, Dave and Nancy, they both were going to want to do pickup truck and Jeep work, and they said mostly what they were going to do was patch panels, so they wanted to learn how to do patch panels. This is the one I made earlier. I still haven't got a chance to weld it on, but I really didn't want to weld it on until I got this piece finished, and Nancy made this piece. It's her first piece ever. It needs a little smoothing here, but overall she did a really nice job on it. It's got to be a little bit of finessing and then welded in. And her husband Dave made this piece here, and we just tacked it in with the TIG welder, and he did a beautiful job on that. And once that gets welded, that takes care of all that rust that was down there. That's gone. And this front section has still got a little bit of rust and plus the whole holes, so we get that welded on. That will enable us to finally weld this on, so we get back to this project and start picking away at the Scout. The intent is to pick away at the Scout, pick away at the Cadillac, and also show you some really good stuff. Now, a nice little trick I wanted to show everybody. I held it to the end, so the people that waited to the end, here's a good little trick. One of my students was doing a small little part for his motorcycle. It was the little tail, the seat tail part, and he needed to get a dolly up in there to planish a little bit. It was an aluminum piece he was doing, so I said, well, I have a ton of post dollies. These are my post dollies. And I didn't have one that really fit his circumstance, but I did have a nice hand dolly that he could use. So I said, well, here's what we can do. And it's another use of clay. I use clay quite a bit. So you can take a big blob of clay like this, and you just plant it in there like that. You can hammer it in with a leather hammer or a dead blow hammer. And it just really stabilizes the dolly. So that's a nice little trick. Just a little Pexto dolly that I picked. No, Stanley. Pexto makes the same one though. But being able to lock your dolly on there any way you want, you can put it any way, and it pretty much stays there really nicely too. And you can reach under and hold it with your hand while you're slapping the piece. But that's a neat little trick. All right, just one other little tool trick here. This is a little English wheel I made probably a couple years ago, and the intent with this was I made it out of a piece of 1/8" aluminum. It's a laminated piece, and it's got a hinge in it, and the idea was to make a lightweight English wheel that fit over the fender so you could wheel right on the fender. And I intended to make all this stuff out of aluminum. This was just all a little prototype I made. And it just was, even if I had made all this stuff out of aluminum, it still would have been too cumbersome. So I just basically threw it in the corner, and it's been sitting there collecting dust. And Ed was working on his Alfa, and we needed to get into some little tight spots, and I'll show you where it works out really well. Yeah, this panel here, which was a real challenging little panel with the reverse curve in here and all kinds of stuff going on. James, who made this panel, this is where this English wheel really stars. You can get in and smooth stuff really easy with this. These yokes are not ideal yet. I got to do a little bit of work on them. But anyways, I'm not going to do any more on this particular wheel, but I'm going to make a smaller English wheel for doing detail work like this. Now, typically it's done a lot with a planishing hammer, but every time I use a planishing hammer, I'm so used to the absolutely amazing results you get from an English wheel, that chrome plate finish, and I just don't like the faceted look that you get from the intermittent hammer look. And I feel there's a better feel. You can feel the little vibrations as you're going through, and you can feel the smoothness. So I'm definitely an English wheel guy as opposed to a hammer guy. And I'm going to design a small little wheel like that, and maybe I'll sell plans for it or something. This is a real nice little tool. Ed's been using this quite a bit, and a lot of my students have been using it. And this is actually a terrible example because it's not idealized yet, but the overall trick of it is a small diameter top wheel and little 2-inch wheels total. And it just allows you to get into those nice little tight spots. All right, I hope you enjoyed that video. I think we gave a lot of good information. We always try to give really good information on my ProShaper channel. Please give us the likes, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your car club friends, and thanks for watching. And remember, metal is clay. I'm Wray Schelin.